A first time for everything, right? That's how the saying
I
goes.
say go with the flow.
All right, well, let's go with the flow then. So this is an episode of the Halcyon Frequency Podcast airing Sunday, February 20th, 2022. My brain is thinking 2023 right now for some reason, and that's a problem. But I'm blind, and I host this show, apparently, and I'm joined by some lovely friends from the stream team Halcyon Frequency. Let's just start with Bellinair. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I met my family today. Went to eat some sushi buffet. I was so full. We slept 3 hours because of it. It was nice.
That sounds lovely.
That sounds great. Yeah, that sounds...
Yeah, it was amazing. It was really good. And it was good to see my mother because because of the pandemic and everything, we haven't seen her again in like months. So it was really nice.
That's awesome.
FG, how are you today? That's kind of a loaded question.
That is a very loaded question. Let's just say I am a ball of stress.
Ball of stressed otters.
Yeah.
And
So are we talking like a golf ball or like a soccer ball?
No, like like those squeeze balls that that you have for stress. So I'm like that ball, but between somebody's fingers. Like somebody is squeezing the stress ball, and I'm like squeezing out between their fingers. That's me right now.
Or like one of those like giant chair balls that you like sit on, except it's somebody who's maybe like too heavy for it, just squishing it.
They're squishing it down. Yeah. That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Jess, how are you today?
I'm good. It's early and I'm awake. I'm here.
It's just like me. I'm awake, it's early, and we're recording a podcast. So we got a lot of things to talk about today. It's kind of a full recording day for us, and so we're just gonna, I don't know, ramble about a few things. But something that's kind of been like bouncing off of the front of a lot of our mental spheres as of late is we've been bombarded with a barrage of emails about something that FG kind of wanted to talk about a little bit here.
Yeah, so ever basically as a result of the pandemic, Steam has been doing these demo festivals. So Summerfest, Next Fest. Now it's called Steam Next Fest, and a lot of people, a lot of developers, always have demos ready for those festivals, which is awesome because I have gotten to play so many games because of this that otherwise I wouldn't have played, and that I got to know about, and then I got to prepare, myself for when these come out and like plan everything and then put it into my calendar and whatnot. And we now have gotten to this really weird place where they're sending out emails to content creators, inviting people to play their demo early. So it's not even just like early access to the game. It's early access to a work in progress version of their game. And it just, I don't know, it just strikes me as weird. And, because it's like, first of all, having early access to a demo when nobody has heard of the game yet because the fest is not live, so they haven't looked at the store page, is kind of, I don't know, counterproductive in a way. And also, I've played demos that were 10 minutes long. Like, I don't need early access to that on stream.
Yeah, as a streamer at least you don't really need it, but if you were recording for YouTube, then a couple days early might be handy.
Yeah. That's true. But as a streamer, like my people right now, like if I could have streamed some of these demos today, but nobody on Twitch right now is looking for demos. And like for upcoming games, they look for demos and gameplay when the fest is live and they actually get like, informed about those games. Right now everybody is watching Horizon Forbidden West. So I don't know, it's
I don't think it even matters on like what people are watching. What concerns me about these festivals is like making a demo or making a playable slice of a video game is a lot of work, and making a good one is a ton of work. And you'd always hear about developers crunching to get something out and ready for E3, to have something that's playable on the floor at E3 that, press and I guess some creators at the time could go and play. And that was always like a sticking point for around the season. And now I'm starting to see these demos, these limited time demos, be released as part of these next fests, and they're happening like 4 times a year. It feels like they're pretty frequent.
Yeah.
I'm starting to wonder. It's like, is this a sudden large amount of extra work that these developers are having to put on to be noticed on the Steam store? Because like the Steam store operates just like the YouTube front page at this point. It's all popularity algorithms and who has the most follows and wish lists on their product page. So you kind of have to participate in these events and do well in these events to actually get the follows, to get the wish lists to be surfaced on the Steam page. That to me is, I think, kind of the scarier part of it. And I guess the reason why publishers would send us emails, because like looking through my email when you brought this up, FG, I went through and found one or two that read very similarly. I don't think I've gotten quite the bombardment of emails just because I'm not that active in the new games area these days. So I don't get contacted by that many devs currently. And they're all competing for that spotlight. Right? And they need whatever coverage they can get, and they need it, and they need a lot of it in order to be surfaced there, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is a... Yeah, go
ahead, Bill.
I mean, it is just like a part of marketing, and I do like the heads up from especially developers who make games that do interest me and getting the email, but I don't really see the point to also go doing it like early. But I've done like several of these Steam demo fests and done like 40 games each time or something, and it's been a really, really good way to find like some really nice games. And it's also been great with like my community, and they keep suggesting like, this demo looks good, could we take like 10 minutes to try this one and then after the whole event, I have played quite a lot of those games. Like Epic Chef was one of the ones I picked up from a demo fest, and several others that I'm looking forward to play when they actually come out. So they do seem quite handy though.
Like,
agreed.
Absolutely. Like, the demo fests have been awesome. And I think you actually brought up a really good point, Blind. How much this adds to potential crunch. That is actually a big concern. That's a very good point, I think. And yeah, it's just, I was just going to say,
Go on.
No, I was just to reiterate on that. I don't mind being informed about having demos coming up in the fest. I really, really like that. Like, I wouldn't be upset about like those kind of emails. It's just, I find it really strange, and yeah, it just doesn't make sense to offer streamer early access. YouTube, yes, as Belle has said, because that way YouTubers can record stuff early, but for streaming it really is not necessary. But I guess it's too much PR work to split it up and make it so that only YouTube people get the early stuff and then Twitch streamers later and that sort of stuff. That is, I guess, too much work, which I can understand, that people don't really have the time to invest that. It just means that my inbox is full of emails. Like, I've legitimately gotten probably around 15 emails, I think, about early access to certain things.
That's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And are these games, the early access that you're being offered, is it contingent upon streaming it, or is it just to create any type of content?
It is to create any type of content, but obviously mostly people are reaching out to me for streaming stuff. Because that's where my value kind of is, because my Twitch channel is much bigger than my YouTube channel.
Yeah, I see. I feel like it could be good in the sense, like I think Belle mentioned, for YouTube. That way you at least have a video queued up for when the demos release. But yeah, I don't really see that being totally useful ahead of time, ahead of an X-Fest.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting here worrying that the Steam store is going to become very difficult for not flashy games to surface. And it's becoming more and more and more that way. If your game isn't super bright and colorful and doesn't catch the eye immediately, it's a lot harder for it to get noticed just because of, like, it's the same reason that videos that don't have splashy thumbnails on YouTube don't get noticed, you know?
In a way, yeah, definitely, for sure. That definitely has an effect there.
Like, it's something that's been concerning me about Steam for a while, and this, to me, like, these, and just the rate at which FG is getting emails about it, and the priority that I'm seeing smaller PR companies put on these events, does worry me about Steam, as somebody who doesn't always like to play flashy games.
I wonder if Steam would benefit from having a niche page or like a sub-store.
It's almost like Steam would benefit from having like some sort of like a user curated store where, say, like a creator could like take a list of games that they recommend and like put them in a separate storefront. And nah, they'd never do that. Also, they probably wouldn't surface it, and then they'd bury it if they did do that, so nobody could find it anyway, right?
Steam
It is so hard to find them now.
Incredibly difficult to navigate.
It's like, how the heck do you find curators on Steam? I know that they exist, and like Belladere here has a very successmal one, and FG's started one recently, and it's like...
Yeah. I mean, each time I go to my own curator group to suggest or recommend a new game, I have to figure out, like, where do I go again to actually find the damn curator?
It's like
I go through groups. Yeah, groups.
It's like you go into the groups that you're in on Steam, and then it's like Steam curator connected to groups, and then leave a new review, I think.
Yeah, and it seems like it's changing all the time where it is located, and it gets harder and harder and after like several pages of things before you actually get to the actual curator page and the admin page and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's Steam is a weird beast right now because there's... on one hand, I think they're doing some of the best things for Linux and just PC gaming as a whole as far as platforms go to buy games, but there's some things that they do that I just look at and I squint and I go, I think that's more dangerous than like Epic buying up exclusives all the time. Like there's some things that Steam does that just really makes me wish I had a crystal ball to see what people think of them in a decade.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff they do is like a pet project of one person, and it doesn't really like work as a whole like a whole thing. It's like one guy does this thing and one guy does that other thing, and the curator was someone's pet project, and that guy kind of moved on, and then it's kind of been left to rot somewhere. And same with all the other features.
Like I don't know if any of you guys want to talk about Valve as a whole, but like, do you remember how they ate Campo Santo? Am I the only person who's still sad about that?
Yeah, I wasn't really around for that much.
For reference, Campo Santo little studio made a game called Firewatch. We're making another game that took place in Egypt. I want to say ancient Egypt, and it was in the Valley of something.
The Valley of the Gods.
The Valley of the Gods, yes, that was it. And they were developing that, and they'd released some footage and screenshots, and then they got bought by Valve, and they were like, yeah, we're still working on that. And then like 2 years went by with no information. They're like, yeah, we're not working on that. So,
yeah, that always sucks when that happens.
Like, you know, people get mad about like Bullfrog dying and such. Like that's my major gripe right now because of how much I loved Firewatch.
Firewatch is a great game though. Like,
yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
It's not the most complicated thing, but it's a wonderful like 6 hours in the forest.
Yep. Very beautiful, very pretty as well. To look at like all the colors and whatnot.
Yeah.
Colors.
I guess this topic for me is just kind of a thing that could just kind of go on forever because I have so many like little nitpicks and things that I could poke at with Steam and just get grumpy about because I think Steam's an excellent platform and it is my preferred platform for purchasing games and I've given them an ungodly amount of money over the years, but I feel like there's so much wrong with that platform and I really really wish that they were better about things, but you know, at least they turn around and port Portal 1 and 2 to the Switch, which actually wasn't even done by them. They outsourced that, which I think is kind of funny. But
That is funny in a way, yeah.
I don't know. right in time for them to launch their own handheld platform. I'm actually really curious about how well those run, Portal 1 and 2 on the Switch.
I would imagine really well. Like you get Witcher and all kinds of games on a Switch as well, so
I suppose
it should have enough power to run a Portal game for sure.
It's just Portal is such a twitchy game. Like for me, it's like done. Like I wouldn't want to do that just purely based on the control scheme. Although I did beat the first Portal on a mouse pad, like a touchpad on a laptop. The first time I finished it, that took way longer than it should have. But just to like execute some of those jumps, but.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we've kind of exhausted that little topic there. Let's take a real quick break, and then when we come back, we will talk about the games that we've been playing this week. I think we got some Power to the People, Diplomacy is Not an Option, and Warhammer coming up. So we'll be back after a very brief message.
Hello, I am Sui. I am a part-time streamer on Twitch, part of the lovely Halcyon Frequency, and I am also a full-time student. I stream primarily wholesome-y kind of indie games with, slice of life, RPG, all that good stuff. And you can follow me over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Suey, Suwey.
And we are back with the 6th episode of the Halcyon Frequency podcast for February 8th. What? For February 20th, 2022.
Well, the past.
What day is it? I don't even. It's because we're recording this on the 18th. That's why. Anyway.
It's for February 20th, 2023, right? That's
February 20th, 2023. Yeah, I think that's definitely the current year.
That's right, yes.
Anyway, speaking of things that definitely take place in 2023, wars of all kinds between various creatures and monsters and magical beings. Belliner, do you want to talk to us a little bit about Warhammer 3?
Yeah, sure. So Total War Warhammer 3 came out yesterday, I think it was. But I've had access for it for over a week, and I've been playing quite a lot of it already. And it's Total War and Warhammer. So if you haven't played those previously, it's a turn-based like empire management with real-time strategy, combat, armies, and all of that. But it's very much still a Total War game, and it's if you've played those previously, it's exactly the same as all the previous entries, with a little different armies and a few new mechanics. But it's actually like a very, very competent entry to the series as it is. But it is plagued by horrible performance issues currently. It is not playable, in my opinion, if you don't have an SSD. I installed it originally on my normal hard drive accidentally. And loading times are like several minutes each time you load into a battle, each time you load out of the battle, each time you load into the map, and all that.
Several
which happens.
minutes?
Yes, it's really long.
Oy vey.
And when you move it to an SSD, or if you install it on SSD, it is like a night and day difference. It's like a few seconds instead of a few minutes. It's literally like unplayable on a normal hard drive.
Good to know.
So yeah, definitely if you're gonna give it a go, definitely put it on an SSD.
I will keep that in mind.
But other than that, there also like there's a lot of stuttering on the map, and I have a pretty decent PC myself, and I had to lower my settings quite a lot when there's a lot of armies and a lot of heroes moving on the map, and it's doing the turns and everything. It gets very, very janky on that. But like the actual combat, which is the proper meat of the game, obviously, no issues there at all. That works like smooth as butter, really well done. All the controls are a little bit better than they've been in previous series, and they've been doing like all these small improvements. But if you haven't really played a Total War Warhammer previously, I would probably recommend checking out the first two before jumping into this one, because it's basically the same game with different races. And if you're a cup of tea, not the demons and ogres and what is in this one, maybe orcs and all the other races in the other ones will probably be more your thing. And you can probably get it a little cheaper than this one.
And also they have the Grand Conquest map where all the games fit together into one big...
Yeah, so they have this a mode that's called Grand Campaign, basically, that they introduced into 1 and 2, where you have this like a massive map, and then they combined 1 and 2 as well into like a single map where you have all the races and everything.
It's kind of like what Hitman's doing, actually.
Yeah, basically. And 3 is supposed to join that at some point. Who knows? And apparently it's going to be like even bigger and even more things. But it doesn't have that yet, so even if you're like a veteran of the series, it might be worth waiting for that to come out. Even though actually the current campaign is really good. And the prologue that they included in this one, which is basically the tutorial that they had in the previous ones. I actually played the tutorial in the Warhammer 2 the day before I played the tutorial in 3, because I was supposed to play a little of the 2 before the 3 came out, and then I got an access over a week before the launch, so I didn't have time to play the 2 as much as I wanted to play. But like 2's tutorial is very like simple. It's like this is how you move units and this is how you build a building. But the prologue in 3 is actually like fully voice acted, has animated cutscenes, and it like sets up the story and everything. Plus the tutorial itself is much better done, and actually explains you how to make control groups and things like that that the other one doesn't, which is pretty important in the actual management of the battle and everything. So it's actually, I would recommend that even for someone who's like played these for thousands of hours. It's really nice. And the story from the prologue continues into the actual campaign as well. So you'll be a little lost at what's happening in the campaign if you don't know what happened in the prologue.
I've seen some complaints about that prologue tutorial thing, specifically from people who've played a lot of Warhammer. And the reason they're complaining is because it is the most bone dry, simple, like down to basics, which is good for new players, but for veteran players, it's really annoying. Like very detailed, simple tutorial, right? But the issue is if it is because the story stuff is mandatory for the main game, and also I've heard reports that some of the storytelling in the prologue is better than the main game, but it's combined with the least interesting gameplay portion of the rest of the game.
Yeah, it is definitely. If you are already a veteran of the series, the gameplay is very simple and limited.
It's like,
all of the functions are not available that are normally available, and the combats you have to do are very simple.
I kind of like that, because I'm going to try this game out next week, because as it turns out, I received an email about getting a key for the game early, but it went to my spam folder, completely missed it until the other day. So I was like, okay, I mean, I guess I'll jump on this bandwagon. I've never played the Total War games, but I have to say I'm intimidated. I've been watching people play, and I almost declined because I'm just straight up intimidated by the intensity of the game.
It's like any of these big strategy games. They are always kind of intimidating to get into. But like CK3, for example, is also like a super intimidating game to get into at first. But once you get in it, they're pretty great. And this tutorial will definitely help you a lot with that.
I think I'll say about Total War is deceptively complicated. Like, it looks really, like, one of the scariest looking games ever is like Empire Total War. Like, visually, like, you watch a trailer for that game and it's like giant like square formations of units everywhere on land battles, and then just like sea battles with 1 billion units just like fighting things. Those sea battles are the simplest things ever. You take click ship 1, click ship 2, tell them go next to that, tell you to attack that, tell you to attack that, done. You watch them blow each other up. Like with Total War, it looks extremely complicated, but the empire building side of it is like, as with the Warhammer ones, it's a little bit more obtuse because it's like you're doing less logical things, but it's always just every city has a handful of buildings, and they're never that complicated, and they're pretty simple when you read the descriptions. Like, you're never going to be,
what you need to get and so on.
Yeah, you're never going to be running that much. It's always been kind of a rock paper scissors system of this beats that, this beats that, this beats that. Again, like, it'll be a little weirder because you're in like a fantasy setting, but Total War is actually kind of a really simple style of strategy game. They just do a really good job of pumping it full of fluff to make it look exceptionally complicated, which is also why the fights are so much fun to watch.
Yeah, and with the like Warhammer brand attached to it, they got so much fluff to add to it. And all kinds of flashy things.
Like I've seen this GIF like flying by on Reddit on repeat, which is just one of the ogres or one of the guys in the Nurgle army that just like drops pants and poops on Batty. So
yeah, they've done a really good job also like writing all the lore stuff and getting like a life into the different factions. The Nurgle especially. Some of the descriptions of things are like downright just disgusting, like properly disgusting how they've done. But also, like, ogres are a lot of the like descriptions for things and everything that are written with a really good humor on. And whoever made all the names for like the heroes for different factions and all that, he needs like a raise. Some of the names are just amazing. There is this Chaos Marauder hero that's called Soren Kalsarikännit, which I was really like dying laughing on stream because Kalsarikännit is a Finnish word for getting drunk alone at home in underwear. So it's kind of surprising to see a hero named after a Finnish word like that.
After a little bit of searching around, apparently we have an English phrase for that too, which is pants drunk, which I'd never heard before.
Same. Yeah, I've never heard that.
But apparently that's the English equivalent, because I tuned into Bellinair's stream right when he was having a cackle about that, and I was just like, is this in English? Like, do we have a thing like that in English? And yeah, we do. Pants drunk.
Yeah, it's like the Danish have the hygge. That's kind of the nice and comforting warm sweaters and a little bit of tea and all that, being nice at home. And the Kalsarikännit is like the Finnish version.
That's funny. But yeah, I guess like at this point, for someone who's looking to get into Warhammer, it's maybe they've played the previous ones, but they're like debating as to whether or not they should pick up the third one. Would you say it's in a good spot to recommend right now, even with the performance problems, or should they wait for a couple of patches?
I think the third one is the most accessible of the three. Like, I played the first one and it was pretty rough getting into that. Some of the balance and everything was kind of all over the place when it launched. But I think 3, with especially that new prologue tutorial, is best for the new players. Also, it should be mentioned that it is on PC Game Pass, which is also doing the $1, €1 thing again. So if you want to try it for a month for basically nothing, PC Game Pass is probably the way to do it.
Game Pass.
Not sponsored.
This is like, yes, but also no.
Shakes fist. She's old.
Game Pass is pretty rad, but also, Microsoft. Speaking of, Microsoft, considering, all the world has been is people buying people and hostile takeovers, and that would almost like lead us to believe that diplomacy is not an option. So, that just was too perfect to not jump on. Do you want to talk about diplomacy is not an option again?
Sure. So I picked this one up, and I didn't get to play much with it this past week, but I really want to play more. I really enjoyed it. Diplomacy is not an option. It is a sort of city builder, tower defense, resource management game, and I gotta say, I love the graphics. It reminds me a lot of For the King, like graphic styles in For the King. And it's got a nice sense of humor. There's a setting in the menu where it says diplomacy. And then option 1 is not an option. Option 2 is no. Option 3 is like never or something. So like it's literally just never an option. It cracks me up. I thought that was a nice touch from the developers. So it's a game that relies a lot on physics, and so like I said, I've not really played too much with the advanced building in this game, but from the first level of the campaign that I did, I'm really want to go back and play more. I'm not the biggest into tower defense, and I also never played They Are Billions, but I don't know. I want to go back and try it again.
I think on the last episode, Kiri described it as They Are Billions, but totally accurate battle simulator.
Yeah, like with the graphics, yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
I mean, I'm super busy with just like random other games as I tend to be, but this is one that I'm actually like staring at, going, I think I might try this, just because like I really love the idea of they are billions, but kind of hated it in execution. So I don't know. I'd like to try another game that's like trying that, but yeah, trying.
Yeah, I would say give it a try for sure. I think I'm gonna play some more.
Speaking of playing more, how's that CK3 DLC?
You know, I've hardly even like broken into it. The game is so complicated. I haven't played in so long that I've had to spend so much time relearning the mechanics and relearning the game. And I did like start as a feudal king and was able to somewhat scratch the surface with Royal Court, but then the AI cheated and I lost my kingdom and I was salty. So I started over, but I learned you can get a Royal Court if you're tribal. So I'm playing a regular old game of CK3 and I forgot how much I love it. Such a good game. It's so complicated. It's so hard to wrap my head around, but luckily I have chat members who know what they're doing.
That's always a benefit.
Yeah, it's so good.
Has anybody else here checked out that new DLC more, or is it still just like kind of a?
I haven't played it anymore, but I was wondering if Jess would agree with me that the DLC is cool and what it adds, but it's too expensive.
I cannot really speak to it because like I said, I've hardly scratched the surface, and like I'm intending on playing with it more. But from other people I've talked to, they said that it's been pretty good, and it's added a lot of detail to the game, and has really, really, really increased the intensity and I guess the difficulty and the strategy requirements. It's just made the game that much more deep. But I haven't gotten into that myself.
Because the thing is, like...
Go on.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say that the main piece of feedback that I've heard from people is that it's not too expensive if you have the, like, includes everything Royal Edition. But if you don't have that, like, you already paid for the DLC, those people are complaining that it's too expensive. Because it is a $30 expansion.
I do see it's got mixed reviews.
That's just Paradox.
That's mostly people that are complaining about the price of the DLC. Yep. The thing that I think that quote unquote bothers me a little bit with that price is that, as you stated, if you do a tribal start or if you don't start as a king, you can't take advantage of the DLC. Like, yes, you still get like new events and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, they added stuff like everywhere a little bit and that sort of stuff, right? But like when I played it, I started as a count and I never became a king. So for 8 hours that I played on stream, I never actually had a royal court. I had a court and you can get a couple of people, but you can never get like a royal court. And I don't know, it's like it adds a lot of depth, but you need to be a king to be able to use it. Otherwise, you can't. It locks out a lot of the starts. It locks out a lot of the starts because you don't get to play around with the DLC right from the get-go.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I don't know, so I'm just gonna have to keep progressing through my playthrough and just really gauge how long it takes to access the DLC. And what's gonna be nice about that is that I'll really get to experience it from like the very, very bottom of, or the very beginning of the experience, and then like be able to build up to the end. Like if I'm able to follow the playthrough all the way through. But when I tried it, starting as a king, like I don't know, I didn't really get to feel like it was my court. It was the court. So I don't know, maybe that's going to be a unique aspect moving from tribal to feudal.
Yeah.
Well, maybe as you eventually move up to getting a royal court, you can give power to the people? Am I stretching too hard with this one?
Maybe a little.
Maybe a little.
Do you want to give a little power to the people?
Well, so sure. But this is actual power, not like political power. We're talking electrical power.
Well, why not both?
Shocking.
Politically electric power. Let's go.
Yeah, so power to the people is a... Well, I want to say really small, tiny indie game that came out. But then it is also published by Crytivo, so it's not actually that tiny. And
Stylized.
So when you looked at it from the get go, you kind of think, oh, it's like a city builder, like retro looking city builder, but it's not. It's a management sim, because basically you play as the person who is responsible for supplying the power to various cities that pop up on the map, and you have to balance things like loads and people complaining that there's a coal power plant in their backyard, disasters and all that sort of stuff. So it feels a little bit more almost like Transport Tycoon in a way, because you supply the people, the cities with power, the cities grow, and then you need to expand your infrastructure and that sort of stuff. There's unlocks. There's a bunch of campaign maps. 12 campaign maps with 3 different difficulty levels, plus 2 different play modes, plus a sandbox mode, plus a weekly challenge mode. It actually has a lot. Like I played it first, and I played it on hard, and that's not like when I played it the first time. That's not necessarily the best idea to do it, because you're kind of supposed to progress through it, and you get points for beating maps on all different difficulties, and that unlocks more buildings that you can then place and utilize, like stronger buildings. So I went back this week because I didn't really know what to play, and I wanted to play a puzzle game-ish, because it's also a little bit puzzle gamey, like this management simmy, but puzzle gamey, because you can't cross all of your lines, you can't just connect them together, because then there's too much load when everybody cooks dinner and everything explodes.
But that's fun, though.
There is an achievement for that.
Good.
But you also don't want to do that, because then people get unhappy. And I went back to it. I played through 2 maps on medium, and then started on a 3rd. And that feels like a good start. And yeah, I've just been really enjoying it. It's been really fun and chill, and yeah, it's just like, I don't know, it's a neat little management sim. And also for the people who are looking to 100% games, no like super undoable achievements, which is nice.
It just looks like it takes time based on the rarities from what I was just looking at.
Yep.
This seems like an interesting game. Like this feels like a game that I would have jumped right on like 5 years ago, because I do in my heart love these types of management sims, especially ones that are like, it's a management sim, but you're not directly engaging with the construction of a city. It's like you're just like the game does that. You're just kind of building around the edges, like your Transport Tycoons and your various other business management city builders. It looks like a game that shouldn't have been made this year, but and should have come out in like 2002, but kind of in a good way. So.
That was actually my question. So you don't build the city up. The city just builds itself, and you just have to adjust the power?
You have to supply, you have to adjust the power, yeah. And so buildings, so the cities expand, but they also level up buildings inside, and stuff like the density of the city goes up. So at the start, you have like lots of small, like, single family homes, and then suddenly they get toned down, and then you've got an apartment building. And, they use a lot of power at dinner time. And then there's, like, a mall that uses lots of power when it's, like, dark and there's, like, everything lit up. And then there's hospitals who get, like, really upset if they lose power, obviously. And just, that sort of stuff. Like, it's a neat little game. It's made by a little studio, apparently, in Denmark. And, yeah, no, it's just, I don't know. It was, yeah. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it.
I enjoyed it as well when I played the demo. it should be also noted that this one and actually the Diplomacy Not an Option were both in the previous Steam Demo Fest, and it's actually where I picked up both of them.
Yep,
they
same.
look like my type of games, and I actually would have missed both of them if I didn't have that as Steam Demo Fest. So.
Yep. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I just really enjoyed it, so that gets a thumbs up from me.
Now I want to try it.
Yeah, I just
You should. It's really good.
I just sent Cry Vito an email. Games like that, to me, I'm always inherently skeptical because I think there's a very fine line between tycoon, city builder, or city interactive game / puzzle game. There's a very fine line between really fun and well made and exceptionally boring. And
yeah, it's not boring. Like it starts off a little bit boring, but if you're looking for intensity, just do the mode where you cannot pause at all, and just watch your city crumble and burst into flames because there is either too much power or no power at all.
I'm trying to remember the name of this game because I just remember the old one. There was this economy, like transport tycoon style thing that I played a couple of years ago, which used to be called Project Automata, but then they changed the name of it. And I'm trying to remember the name of it now because I was just going to point at that game as something that was just painfully boring for me. But I can't.
Do you mean, did this come out a while ago? Do you mean,
It did come out.
wait.
Rise of Industry. That's probably it. Rise of...
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Yes, that was it. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
You said this one's boring?
I put like 20 hours into it, and it had... I don't want to just like trash a game that came out in 2019 or left early access in 2019, I guess, but like it had no soul is what I would say. It was just very hollow. There was no character to it. It was very, very, very numbers gamey and not in a good way. Like, if a game like this for me becomes all about the numbers, I just kind of don't want to play them anymore. And Rise of Industry, I think, was the one for me that burned me off of the genre and made me not want to play these types of like tycoon or strategy management games anymore because of how bored I was playing it. That's the only way I can describe it. It's like everything about it mechanically was perfectly competent, but the act of actually playing that game kind of burned me on the subgenre for quite some time.
And it's kind of a problem with all of these strategy games of this type. That they started out with like early game is super fun when you get setting up things and building roads, and also like Banished is the same as well. Like when you're setting up your early game, it's really fun. But once you get into like a late game, it just all falls apart. And there's like nothing ever in the late game of these games, and just turns into this like a tedious grind of just expanding for expanding reason and no really like a point of progression or anything. And it's always at that point where it's like, I don't want to play this anymore.
It's kind of funny because a lot of those games are like business management games where you're going out and destroying the environment and just like ripping down trees and building roads and laying concrete. And it's just like, I'm expanding for no logical reason aside from to make the numbers get bigger. Wait a second.
Yeah, basically that's the problem. Like, and it's usually not that long to reach that point in a lot of these. It's like you play for a few hours and you're in that point, and then it's just like, well, numbers are going up. I'm adding new buildings. Numbers are going up. I'm adding more buildings, without actually having like any kind of interesting progression or anything happening at the end game.
I just think it's hilarious because it's just an allegory for why capitalism is bad and also boring gameplay mechanics. It's like I'm trying to like think of a way that like someone could make a game like this without like, because like there's kind of like two ways you can go with it, right? You can make it more sandbox or you can make it pretty strictly level focused. And I think games that end up being strictly level focused kind of dodge this problem a little bit because you get into a level, you play out the level, and once those objectives are clear, then I guess you could continue in sandbox a little bit, but the level is done, right? And I think like Roller Coaster Tycoon back in the day and like Parkitect as well kind of does this really well where it's just like, well, I will approximately fill up this park in the space of time with a little bit of free space so that if I want to continue building after the objective is completed, I can, but I don't need to because the next level just unlocked and we should go do that now. But at the same time, like a lot of these games end up, I think, just being like just tycoon and business management and like production line route games just end up being about the sandbox at a point. And I think that's where it kind of falls apart for me because they focus too heavily on the sandbox. And I think that happens often in early access because sandbox lends itself better to early access because you don't need to have a strict list of levels. You don't need to have a strict list of scenarios for an early access game. You just need the sandbox because then you can like plug different pieces into that and players can just keep playing it in a more open sense. And I think that's for me where a lot of like these more modern games kind of fall apart and just don't satisfy properly is because a lot of them go into early access and then they do that for 2 to 3 years and they need to keep their players playing. So they have a small campaign that's unfinished, but primarily like they're playing in the sandbox mode. Like just as an example, a game that I play a whole lot of, Songs of Six, which actually has a great sandbox, does run into this problem towards the late game when you start to hit like the 5,000 to 6,000 population in that game. But the developer has a full campaign with like strategy, with like pre-designed like scenario maps like mapped out in his head that he's going to put out for that game in like 2 years. And it's like, I hadn't even thought about that concept because the game is such a sandbox. So I don't know. I feel like sandbox modes are kind of killing these games for me. You know, right? That was a random side tangent. I apologize.
Definitely. No, I absolutely agree with you, actually. Especially if certain things are just not finished yet and unbalanced and that sort of stuff. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I agree with you. I'd rather sometimes just have like, yeah, give me the option to do sandbox, but also just give me level objectives to complete. Like, I think that's why I had such a good time with Jurassic World Evolution 2 as well, because I did not focus on like going to sandbox at all. I just tried to complete the objectives on like the hardest level difficulty, and that was really fun.
Yeah, I have to say, like, for me, sandbox modes are tough because if I lack directive, I just don't know what I'm doing and I lose interest really quickly. So having a direction to work towards or a goal to work towards is nearly always preferable.
I think for me, the point where sandboxes fall apart is when all I'm doing is making numbers go up and making the base bigger. That's the part where it falls apart for me. I think that there are some examples examples of this where it doesn't bother me, like in Dwarf Fortress, for example. Like there is a point in Dwarf Fortress where you're like, well, I'm just building this fort. All right, well, it's time to retire the fort and go do something else in the world, right? If you understand how all of that game's mechanics work together, there's always something you could go do elsewhere in the world that isn't necessarily the fortress that you're currently working on or the adventure that you were just playing. But I think the problem is when games are simpler mechanically and there's less that you can actually do in it. Like Transport Fever 2, great game. Fantastic game, actually. That game hit that so hard for me so fast. Like, there's just points in that game where it's like, well, I guess I could, like, build up another transport route for coal slightly further distance to make slightly more money than the trucks that I already have running. I guess I could run boats up this river. I guess I could, like, invest millions of dollars in this huge train track, but, like, the trucks are doing just fine. And what does it do? Transports more faster. So unless you really enjoy the act of like building and designing these train routes, which is real fun for a bit, the game just like goes.
Yeah, they kind of need some kind of evolution of gameplay towards the end game or like the mid game that kind of changes and shakes the whole how the game works. So
yeah,
I guess if you care about it, achievements can alleviate that a little bit, but that obviously only works for people who actually care about achievements. Like if you just want to play the game, then that obviously.
But the achievements are basically like goals as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It gives you something to aim for instead of just having to figure out the fun yourself.
Yeah, but not everybody cares about achievements in the games, right? So if you just don't care, then obviously they're not going to give you anything.
I mean, achievements are also a fine line for me. Like, I think that achievements are either, hey, this is like an extra goal. Like, I think maybe my favorite example of achievements that I've had in a video game in the past few years is probably Brigador. And the reason Brigador does them so well is because Brigador has its freelance mode where you just put together mechs or tanks or hovercrafts and go into maps that you've already cleared with random enemy placements and blow stuff up. But what a lot of the achievements in that game is play this weirdly specific in unusable layout and beat this number of maps. It's like it forced me to play that game in different ways, and I got another 40 hours out of a game that probably would have only gotten 20 out of me originally. And I think that that kind of achievement is really good. I just finished The Veil, which is the fully blind accessible audio adventure. And I missed a side quest somewhere. No idea where. That game has no level select. That game has no chapter select. There is no way in hell I'm going to play through an 8-hour game again to get that one achievement, which is probably 3 minutes of dialogue. Which is exceedingly frustrating and makes me not want to play the game again.
Agreed, yeah.
So I think...
these super unattainable ones.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, this is sort of a beam one, but things it almost takes it to the extreme, but it takes it to the extreme so much that it becomes kind of hilarious already again, is don't open Stanley Parable for 5 years. Those types of achievements.
I love that achievement. I realized I could get that achievement the other a couple of weeks ago and got it.
Yeah. There's some that are just so insane. I don't know, beat this game on triple mega extra hardcore, and I don't know, some of them are just ugh.
I think it depends on
they should be interesting challenges instead of just this a dumb spike in difficulty.
Yeah.
Like the Brigadier ones.
Kill 1,000 of these, 2,000 of these, 3,000 of these. Ugh.
Yeah, the grindy ones are
tedious.
Really get me as well.
I mean, Brigador kind of has some ridiculous ones. There's beat the closed casket special, which is beat the entire game, plus all of the extra maps, plus all of the free DLC maps, plus all of the freelance maps in one sitting without dying, and you can't save. Good luck.
Yeah, see, that's
took me 4.5 hours. I did it.
I guess 4.5 hours is not too bad, but if it's a 60-hour game, it's there is as much as I love it, and I love it, it's Atom RPG. It's a game called Atom RPG, which is basically Fallout but Russia, Soviet Russia.
Yeah. And
it's got a lot of it's got heart and soul in it. I love that game. It's amazing. But they literally have a game, a game mode, just don't die until you hit level 27 and then die. And it's and that game is already on normal difficulty, so incredibly hard, and you can just, because you start off with terrible weapons, so you just get one shot. Because we all know how it works in turn-based isometric RPGs. Sometimes you just get XCOM'd, and it's just unless you want to dump 300 hours into trying to get that one achievement, it's just, yeah. Even I, as an achievement hunter, just no, thank you.
Yeah, I kind of have the same problem with RPG games as well. I've played Pathfinder last year, and they are 150 hours of gameplay. But I'm not really for the achievements, but I'm more missing out on a content. If you miss a whole a nice side story, and then I have to play another 100 hours to go do that again.
Yeah. That's why when I play an RPG, I go to every single question mark and location on the map, because what if I miss something?
That's why I don't play RPGs, because it takes too damn long when I do that.
that is word, yeah. I have come to love shorter RPG games, 8 to 12 hours. Mwah, perfect.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that was Power to the People.
And every other side tangent.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know. Side tangents are good in content like this. I think that people like listening to us ramble about stuff. So I just kind of want to pop this up as halfway an ad, but also just because it's a something that we as a doing. The Project Zomboid servers had a reset, and I was playing on that last night and had some fun shenanigans with people. So if you're in our Discord and you want to play some Project Zomboid with me and maybe FG, and I don't know who else is going to play on the server this week, but I'll be playing more of that.
Not me.
I kind of I had some fun events happen, but it's just like it's a lot of Project Zomboid things, like I was running around in the upper floor of a building, vaulting through windows and parkouring around and avoiding zombies and good times.
I faced through a roof. That was great.
You fell through a roof?
Yeah, I faced through. So apparently, this is actually a tip. If you ever need to escape from a zombie and you're in a 2-story house, you can jump out the window and fall down, because I don't think there's fall damage, first of all. And second of all, but I fell through a roof and it was fine. Like,
That's
you can
fine.
just face through a roof and it's fine. Like, you can escape. That's great.
Hacks.
Good tip. No, it's just because apparently the roofs are coded, at least those roofs, the ones that, that don't exist, they're coded to just not exist, basically, as like something that you can stand on. It's quite funny.
Yeah, they have no collision. You can just slip through them, which is kind of great.
Yeah, no, it's quite helpful.
I was in a shady motel by one of the trailer parks just south of West Point, and was smacking zombies on the upper floor, and had to vault out of a window at the back of it to my two friends who drove the car up behind, and to get into the car to drive away, and I broke a leg doing it. So you definitely can take damage jumping out of a window, but maybe it's what you land on. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. I
Maybe
think I landed on a sofa.
Maybe it's like Dwarf Fortress, where like you land on a wood floor and it's fine, and you can fall 15 stories, and as long as you land on wood, you're good. But if you land on platinum, you're going to explode. Because Dwarf Fortress calculates its fall damage based on density of the obstacle you collide with, not the speed at which you're falling, which is funny.
That is funny, yeah.
Yeah. So you put lead everywhere on the ground, and then nobody takes damage because lead is not very dense and very malleable.
Nice.
But the games that I've been playing this week are pretty much the same. I finished The Veil, like I mentioned earlier. I think that game is wonderful. Like mild frustrations with that one achievement aside, I'll maybe go back in like 3 years and get the achievement. I don't really care. Or if they ever add a chapter select, I'll go figure out what I missed, and because I have a pretty good idea of the area that it's probably in, which is at the end of the game, unfortunately.
Oh no.
But like I think that, without spoiling anything, I think that game wraps up very, very well. Initially it kind of has some just annoying fantasy tropes, and I think they subvert those in a nice way. There is Kiri mentioned a point where like the voice acting gets a little weird, because you're very much having a voice actor talking to the same voice actor with the same voice actor in the background. Yes, but it is possible to discern them. It's fine. It's like they had a limited cast and it shows, but I think that they did a lot with almost nothing, and I think that it's kind of a triumph in that regard. I've been doing more research into audio adventures, just because the people who did watch it, I was kind of quiet, but the people who did watch it really, 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 really enjoyed it and want me to do more stuff like this. So I've been researching games like this, and this just seems to be the most production value a game like this has ever gotten. There's quite a few of like audio adventures out there, but a lot of them feel a lot more like playing a visual novel that reads to you. Which is fine. I mean, like, games like that are pretty cool, especially stuff that's like text reader compatible. But stuff like this that's like, fully voice acted adventures with multiple cast members and like actual meat and gameplay and a very light gear system, like there really isn't much out there like that. So I hope that more people make games like this, because I think that The Veil is something kind of special, and I think it deserves all of the accolades and positive buzz that it got, and I wish it got more, because unfortunately it's like borderline impossible for people like us to really sell games like this, because it is really difficult to stream a game with no graphics. So that's kind of all I really have to say about The Veil. Is there anything anybody else wants to talk about games, or should we go to a break?
No, I have nothing. I've just kind of been going back to older games this week besides Power to the People. So another run in Battle Brothers, so that's always nice, getting, instead of XCOM, getting Battle Broed. But in case you're also a Battle Brothers, you enjoy Battle Brothers, it's getting a free DLC in like March, so that's cool.
Maybe I'll go back to Battle Bros then. I played it very early access when it was very, 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 very early, and then never went back. Maybe. Maybe.
Maybe I'll give it a try.
It's fun.
I think
you'll enjoy it. Yeah.
It's like fantasy XCOM with the bloat removed.
Yeah, pretty much.
I just want to say that either next week or the week after, Dwarf Fortress is getting a roadmap, which is supposedly going to highlight everything that is left to be done before release. So I'm very excited about that, but that's not stuff that's actually out yet. That's just an announcement of an announcement, I guess. The classic. But speaking of announcements for announcements, I'm going to announce that now we are going to a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit of news and a couple questions. And you will hear our voices in a few seconds, right after this short message.
Do you like indie games? Or what about strategy? Are you tired of screen shake and motion blur? Stop by my streams on Twitch to discover new games and experience wholesome community interaction in a simulation sickness-friendly environment. You can find me on twitch.tv/2dkiri. I'll see you there.
All right, everybody, welcome back to this here Halcyon Frequency podcast, airing February 20th, 2024, let's just say for this point. Because what year is it? It's 22. It's 2022. Okay. We got
it was still 2020.
Shh. I don't need that conspiracy theory rattling around in my brain again, although that is a good one. There's that 2020 never ended. We've all just lost our concept of time because they started a black hole in 2012. Anyway, it's not true. They didn't do that, but it is a good rabbit hole if you want to listen to people who don't know how science works. Anyway, we have a little bit of news here, and then we're going to do your listener questions. If you'd like to submit questions for the questions segment, or just discuss any of the podcast topics we have here over on the Halcyon Frequency Discord, which can be found through our website, halcyonfrequency.com, you can ask us questions in the podcast topics section, or rather podcast questions sections, not the podcast. The podcast topics is for discussion. Anyway, let's talk about some news. So in March 2023, you will no longer be able to buy games on the 3DS and Wii U stores, as announced by Nintendo, and I have a source for Video Games Chronicle. The actual numbers of games disappearing are not that insane, but still too many. So around 450 digital-only Wii U games. A lot of these games are available on other platforms. Keep in mind, so these numbers are bigger than they might initially seem. Around 600 digital-only 3DS games, around 100 games on the Wii U that are also available physically, around 300 3DS games that are also available physically, and nearly 530 virtual console games. Around 350 of them are not currently available on Nintendo Switch Online, which is the current generation of this. That I'm looking at this article by Chris Scullion, I think is how you say that, Chris, from Video Games Chronicle. So this news, when I heard about this, I powered on and plugged in my 3DS and started scanning through the eShop, looking at games that I know are not going to be available elsewhere, including a Dr. Mario game and a bunch of others. And those games are expensive, for one thing, and I know that a lot of ripping off of these devices has already happened, and those games are available if you want to emulate them. So it's not like they're going to disappear entirely, but I'm just curious on your guys' thoughts on games like this disappearing and storefronts shutting down.
It's always kind of sad in a way, because it is an era kind of disappearing and fading into the black, I guess, in a way. Because I, for one, I used my 3DS probably thousands of hours. I actually used that console and I took it with me and that sort of stuff. So it's always bittersweet in a way. It's good that they're being saved, for sure. That's great. But it's always a bit bittersweet. And I think, as you brought it up as well, it just highlights again how atrocious it is often it often is to get like older Nintendo titles on current gen consoles, because like the virtual, like the retro games on Switch, like the availability right now is just meh, and you need to pay for it as well. You can't just buy a game, right? I don't know. It's sad.
So, to be clear, they're not like porting any of this to the Switch library?
Question mark, question mark, question mark, slash.
We don't know.
I know that they like ported some like NES stuff to the Switch marketplace. So I don't know if they maybe are doing that too.
There's Nintendo Switch Online, which is an annual subscription, which is not dissimilar to the way Game Pass works. Which does have some games, right? As highlighted in this article, around 530 virtual console titles, which are available on the Wii U, and 350 of them are not currently available on Nintendo Switch Online. So Nintendo Switch Online is the paid-for annual service that gives you multiplayer and internet connectivity, but also gives you access to these games. It's like $20 a year, I think, for the base level. But that doesn't include everything because you have to pay more to get N64 games. So it's like a lot, like the vast majority of these games are not currently available. And I would say it's unlikely that we'll see the exact same library in Nintendo Switch Online.
Yep.
It's quite unlikely. And all of these are $5 a pop because the virtual console was like you buy them a la carte, not you.
Yep.
You know, and so a lot of these games, guarantee you very few people have bought them. There's a lot of games in the old virtual console umbrella that are extremely niche and hard to find. A lot of them are very expensive physically. And it's like, those games are available out there. There are other places to play those games, but Nintendo for a while there was unintentionally boosting the popularity of the retro gaming scene just purely by making these games available. And I think that that's a very positive thing for the industry as a whole, is just having these old games and making them available for people to play. And the second that their boutique storefront for their boutique aging console goes away, the access to those, your only option now is piracy, right? If you want to access games that are no longer for sale and only ever worked on one platform, you have to get a flash cart for that platform, or somebody has to make something not akin to the analog pocket, a new modern device based on that old hardware that runs those games and plays them as they were intended. Or you're then emulating them on a PC, which is a completely different experience. And a lot of these games really don't work unless you have especially for the 3DS, unless you have the stylus and the touchscreen, right?
Exactly.
I don't know if you've ever tried emulating one of those games, but legality aside, I have, and it's not the same, not even close.
I've never even touched a 3DS, so I wouldn't know.
Ironically, you probably would love 3DSs because half of the games that I was looking to buy are all of the Picross games. Believe it or not, Nintendo has a very long series of Picross games, which is just that color by numbers game that you play. Or Coloring Pixels, I think it's called. That's Picross, right? Nintendo has one of the longest running franchises of Picross games that are all on their mobile systems. They have.
Well, that sounds nice.
There's 8 of them that are going to be unplayable or unpurchasable after this date. That I've been looking at, going I might buy all the these Nintendo themed Picross games, and they're not super cheap, but I want them because I want to play them. And I have a couple of them. I have Picross 3D. It was good times.
Yeah, it's a shame,
have to
right?
admit. Yeah, I do have to admit I haven't touched my 3DS in a long time, but that's mostly because I don't really go anywhere, and I don't really play handheld consoles or consoles in handheld mode with a Switch at home that much. And obviously 3DS, streaming, that was always a pain in the butt, obviously. And getting that done because you had to get a modded 3DS for it because, no output, no native output in the console, and you needed to get it modded in and whatnot. So, Yeah, it is. It is always just an end of an era. Mostly, obviously, with the 3DS. The Wii U, I think, never kind of was that widely accepted by people. Like, it probably... I mean, we all know it was, like, the worst-selling console for a while there.
I was going to say,
I mean,
but there's other consoles that would like your number, but...
No, for Nintendo. For Nintendo, it
yes.
was not great.
It
But-
definitely was a noted failure for Nintendo.
Yeah.
Like just an example. A game that I own on the Wii U, which is no longer available in NA because they stopped selling it a couple of years ago. It's Fast Racing and Fast Racing Neo. Those are basically F-Zero. And I have both of them. And I'm losing my voice apparently. Fast Racing Neo is not available in North America at all anymore, and also neither of those games are going to be purchasable anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, they could absolutely be played on a PC. Like, there's nothing, like, specific about, like, I can't remember what they used the tablet for in that game, but it wasn't anything useful. It was just F-Zero. It was just a really fast hovercraft racer. I don't know.
No, I just want to play F-Zero.
Well, I mean, you can. That's a game that's really well emulated.
That's true, yeah. Yeah.
Bloody hell.
But obviously, this is a problem that's been around for a long time already. It's like this is just the newest thing that's going away. But like all the like Commodore 64 games and like really old stuff. I actually wrote an article about like virtual archaeology about like 10 years ago in Swedish about the same thing. Like losing access to games just because you don't have the hardware anymore. Like you actually literally have to retro engine like a hardware because you don't just have hardware to dig into the games anymore, and some kind of preservation thing is kind of required for that, and it usually falls on just the like retro community and fans saving the games. But something like bigger would be really nice to have, like actual preservation project.
So here's just a real quick list of 3DS games that are going to be virtually unplayable anywhere outside of emulation. Chibi Robo, Let's Go. Dylan Rolling Western 1 and 2, Dr. Mario, The Miracle Cure, Fluidity Spin, never heard of that one. Cat Souls Corridors, I've heard of that one. Mario and Donkey Kong, Minis on the Move, Mini Mario and Friends, Amiibo Challenge, Nintendo Pocket Football Club, which is like they made a soccer game, which I think is only available in EU. And then Picross 8, Pocket Card Journey, Pokemon Battle Tonze, which is a Pokemon Link battle game, Pokemon Picross, Pushmo, Crashmo, Stretchmo, and all the other pullbox games. Harmo Knight, Sakura Samurai, and a bunch more Picross games, Steel Empire, and Tokyo Crash Mobs, and some of those are region locked too, and it's like you can't even get them specifically anywhere. And then just looking at all of the other titles that are going away that are as part of the eShop virtual console stuff, like there's 70 Game Boy Advance games that aren't available officially anywhere else, 50 Game Boy games that are not available officially anywhere else, 31 Game Boy Color games that are not available officially anywhere else, 40 Turbo Graphics games, that's a console that didn't sell very well, that are not available anywhere else officially, 16 Game Gear games, 30 DS games, 35 Wii games, and 47 NES games, 27 SNES games. But, I guess the silver lining here is they've given us, over a year to get those games if you want them. So I guess if you own a Wii U that's still plugged in, or if you own a 3DS and you want any of those games, it's time to grab them. Because you'll still be able to download them after that date. You just won't be able to purchase them. Which is, March? Yeah, March 2023. You will no longer be able to buy new games.
This is sort of weird, though, because I know that this is not the first time something like this has happened, but, like, looking at it from my perspective as someone who never had a 3DS or a Wii U or, like, got to experience these games, to remove them means that there are people like me and then younger generations who will never be able to experience these games. and they're an important chapter in the development of gaming and like where we are today. And it's sort of weird just to like remove it from the book.
Yeah, I mean, there's people like the Video Game History Foundation that are working very hard to archive all of this stuff legally or illegally. They don't really care. People are, ripping and making flashcards and have been doing that sort of stuff for ages in this scene just to make sure that those games are playable and archived. And like I said, there's a very large amount of time that has been given now to people to go buy them. But over time, 3DSs will stop working. Wii U's will stop working. And the accessibility of a lot of these games is going to go away and only matters to companies like Nintendo if it makes them a lot of money, right? Back to the capitalism comment. It's just like these games will only exist in a playable state officially if they're selling. And you go and you look at a lot of these games that are going away, a lot of them are very, very, very niche titles. And I guess it's like pointing at PC and going, yeah, at least what Steam is doing is probably in the right direction, right? Let's just make it available and make those games at least remain purchasable. I mean, there are plenty of games on Steam that don't play on Windows 10 or Windows 11 and require Windows 7. There are some games in my Steam library that I can't play because they don't run on Windows 10 natively. But there are ways I can make those games work. At the very least, I can download the files for them. So there's that at least. But it sucks.
You go, just.
Okay, I was gonna just quickly kind of float this. Do you foresee a situation where maybe they'll put the whole bundle up for I don't know, some exorbitant amount of money, like $300 for the whole collection?
Are you suggesting Nintendo is going to give us a good price for things?
I don't know.
Doubtful.
No, this is Nintendo. The fact that they even give us a warning like this is, I guess, something to be happy about.
I would be more expecting of them to raise the price.
Yeah, of these games, same.
Yeah, it would be nice to see a actual Nintendo emulator of a PC, for example. That's an official one, and then they could sell a bunch of these as a bundles, like all the Picross games from a 3DS and so on and so on. So you would have one place to go for them instead of having to get the more or less shady ways if you can't get them otherwise.
Nintendo has made it shockingly and starkly clear that they don't care about their history over the past few years, which leads me to say things like, yeah, go look at the stuff that leaked out of Nintendo with the big leaks not too long ago. Go read about that stuff because it is fascinating to learn about that company as an enthusiast of video games, which they will never give to us themselves. That is not something they will distribute to us, period.
It's also interesting because they've obviously greatly benefited themselves from the people who are keeping these games alive, all the NES games and SNES games and all the speed running and all the things like that. They've obviously benefited greatly money-wise themselves, being able to sell them on Switches and whatnot as retro games. People are still keeping them alive.
Yeah. They're just going to wait for another opportunity to dangle it over us as a carrot and then try and sell them to us again in the future, probably. But
if they made the bundle, that's a carrot I would go for.
Yeah, I would absolutely buy them on a PC as well if I could have them on a native emulator.
Yeah, that'd be
bundles
amazing.
of games. I would shop a ton on that.
I would spend so much money on it. Oh my god.
Yeah, I don't know. Nintendo is not into one-time purchases, right? They want
you to
have
buy the
everything
same game 15 times.
Yeah, they want to piecemeal it out. I mean, if they could figure out a way to sell you individual games as well as charging you a monthly fee for it, I think they would do it. if they could do that without pissing people off. I don't know. I very much doubt we'll see a lot of these games pop up officially ever.
Yep.
especially the independent ones. Like a lot of those.
Yeah,
companies
you might
don't
see the
exist.
Nintendo's first party ones somewhere, but not the small indie ones especially. They are going to be gone.
Just heed the warning. Check to see if there's anything you want. I'm going to go buy some Picross games over the next couple weeks, I think. Just for the future where I do have to get on a plane again. But I think it's time for us to jump into the questions bucket. And we do have a few questions that have been added since the last recording. So I think I'm just kind of scrolling here and trying to figure out which one we should start off with. But Prismatic Flux has a question, which is there a particular smell you're fond of?
Yes.
Anyone
Yes, there are many.
want to take this one first?
I guess I will. Yeah, I mean, I don't have just a particular smell. I have many. I was compiling a list, and I don't know. And there are so many things I'm forgetting, but some things that are like very stand out to me include that musty basement smell. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. Like when you go into the basement and it just smells musty. That's just like I
Yep.
don't know. It's my childhood.
I know
like,
that smell.
Visiting my family and just that musty smell. I love it.
Old
And,
house.
Yeah.
Unfinished
Yeah,
basement
old
in old
books
house.
or new books.
That's what I was gonna say. And that is also like musty books and old books. I love that smell too. Library. Oh man, it smells so good. So good. I also really like the smell of. This is gonna be a weird one, but cat heads. I don't
Cat heads. Attached to cat or detached from cat? Because I just need to.
a live
clarify that.
attached cat
Okay.
head. I like how it smells. Obviously, cooking garlic, milky sweet coffee. That's a dog.
Bark.
He's against the cat comment.
He's like, what about my head? Okay, almonds. Processed almonds. I don't care about regular almonds, but processed almonds. Roasted almonds, amaretto, soaps, baked goods, almond extract. Like, freaking amazing. So good.
I think food in general is something probably everyone has one or two like food things that are really nice to smell of them.
Pancakes cooking would be my food thing.
You know, any kind of like home cooking as well. It's like smelling that pot bubbling there and meat cooking and all that.
But a particular
I would also go for like a nature things, like going to a forest, like a pine forest or something like that in a proper time of the year. It's like just amazing. All the
Oh, yeah.
nature smells that you get. It's also like super relaxing and actually really good for breathing as well.
Pine trees.
I was gonna say pine
Fall.
trees.
The smell of fall. Just
Fall,
leaves,
yeah.
Yeah, like
apples, cinnamon.
wet
oh,
leaves that are
Though I
slowly
think
going
my
away.
favorite outside like weather smell and sound at the same time.
Oh, rain.
No, it's
ooh,
the
petrichor,
quiet.
yeah.
It's the quiet and the smell of like fresh snow. Like when it's just covered in fresh snow and nothing has been ruined by cars yet and that sort of stuff. And it's like quiet, but like the air is like super fresh and I don't know. I like that a lot.
Would you
Wait,
like
how could I
some
forget
snow?
that?
We got so much snow this year, like mountains. I can send you
Send
some if
it
you
to
want some.
me. We've had 1-2 days where it snowed and it didn't even stick around. I
Yeah,
need
this is
it.
probably one of the most snowiest years ever. While I've lived here, like there is so much snow.
So
We don't have space to put it anymore.
I just want to echo everything that's been said about the nature smells from you guys. But I really, really, really like the pseudo toxic smell of a new synthesizer or new not mainstream electronic device. I have a few things in my house that have arrived recently, like my record players kind of smell like that as well. It's like, this is an electronic device, but it doesn't feel like it was made in a clean room. It feels like somebody soldered it together, if that makes any sense. Like the kind of toxic scent of a freshly soldered device is kind of special, and it's not something that we really get anymore.
It's all that ozone.
Yeah, it's probably like the lead solder that's killing me, but like I like that smell of just like, or even like freshly repaired old electronics. Like a new phone doesn't really smell the same as like something that has been soldered together recently. So
All things in general, like if they're kept well, they have this like smell of old things to them, and it's always very comforting.
like
Yeah.
to
What
kind of,
about the smell of new shoes?
I can't remember the last time I bought
The
shoes.
toxic smell of new shoes.
Actually, talking about toxic smell, the toxic smell of fresh new carpet. Like, have you ever been into like a carpet warehouse?
Yeah,
And that smell is so bad, but
I like the smell of an IKEA.
Oh yeah, IKEA
Yes.
furniture has a smell.
Like it's a very peculiar musk that they give off.
I could just keep going with this list. Like,
Or do any of you guys have
maybe we need
like
a smell podcast.
do any of you guys smell-o-vision, audible smell-o-vision? Have any of you guys been into like a Rubbermaid container store? Like just a plastic store that just
I've
sells
been to a
containers and
container
bins?
store.
Because man, that is a upsetting scent, but also indistinguishable from anything else. Scrolling up in the question bin a little bit, FG, do you want to read this one that, because I think it's fitting that you read this one, that Cutest Ghost asks?
yeah, Curious Ghosts repping the questions. Love it. Love to see it. Thank you again for another question. This is a good one. One that we've talked about within the team ever so often, actually. Do you plan on inviting other people to Halcyon Frequency? And the TLDR is not currently, but maybe probably in the future.
We get emails from people asking to join every so often, and I always have to very politely figure out how to respond with no, which always kind of hurts.
So our goal was never to be big, like big, like 20, 30
We want to be
people
big, but we don't want to be big. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like we're always going to keep it rather small, and like it's like the invites have been very like curated in a way as well. And
Like everybody who's on the team or has been on the team, Dyer included, are people that we've met in person. Just as an example, like I think everybody here has met somebody else in person from the team at some point.
Yep.
Somewhere.
It's
Whether
pretty
that,
important as well to meet in person first.
yeah,
You get a picture of person much better when you see
Yeah.
even like a short period face to face than you ever get a meeting online.
yeah. I think that there's if we didn't have that requirement, I think there would have been other people that joined the team potentially, but it's kind of interesting how working relationships change when you meet somebody in person. Like I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here, but there's definitely people that I have worked with before online that I'm less interested to work with once I've met them at a convention or at an event.
yeah, I echo that sentiment. It's good to like, because we need to jive and we need to like make sure that we can like work with each other and like that we're like sort of on the same wavelength really. And online, it's often it's a little bit easier to hide the rough edges that a personality might have compared to like seeing people in, you know, face to face. But so yeah, basically, yeah, we're in the future probably, but we don't have any concrete plans right now.
Yeah, and I think like, you know, we're recording it right now. We're recording a podcast. We have to give this project, I think, a little bit of time before we even think about bringing on another member.
Yeah, exactly. Because especially now with the podcast, because we'd have to make sure that not only like their streams and their streaming philosophy kind of align with the rest of the team, we would need to onboard people with the podcast and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I mean,
and
previously we just had after hours, which already required onboarding, and I think that this requires even more now. So I think less of a, is Halcyon Frequency going to have new members permanently in the future? That's a discussion that we'll have at some point, and it'll need to be the right person. But I think a more likely thing is we need or should start bringing in guests for this podcast in the future, that are not necessarily members of the stream team, but maybe voices that, we know. Like there are other broadcasters out there and other content creators and other people that we work with from time to time. I mean, Kiri streams with other people on a pretty frequent basis for a lot of the 4X stuff that she does with Humankind and other games. And I know that FG, you have a circle of people that that you've talked with, that you work with on other things that you've done in the past. And I have people that I know who are other creators who I'm working with quietly on other things specifically related to Dwarf Fortress and roguelikes and other things. So maybe like that's a way that you'll hear voices expand in Halcyon Frequency in the future that are not necessarily bringing people into the team proper.
Yeah, that sums it up very nicely, I think.
So, speaking of summing things up, I think that's all the questions that we really have in the question bucket. If you would like to chuck more questions in there, just go into the question bucket. They don't necessarily need to be super serious like that last one, but they can be more things like, what's your favorite smell? Have you bought a mug recently? I don't know. Ask us questions. I think that kind of brings this episode to a close, though. So let's start at the top here and do some shout-outs. Bellinair, where can people find you and the things that you make on the internets?
Well, you can find me on twitch.tv/Bellinair. You can find me on youtube.com/BellinairTV. And pretty much everywhere I'm Bellinair TV, except on Twitch. Every day, European evening times. Not next week, though. I'll be traveling. But other than that,
that's where we can find Bellinair. FG, who are you? What do you do? Where can we find you?
Yeah, I'm FG squared. Literally that everywhere except on Twitter. There's a pesky underscore on Twitter between the FG and the squared. But besides that, I'm on Twitch, YouTube, Instagram, Patreon. I stream indie games 5 days a week, mostly indie games. I'm moving soon, hopefully, maybe, I don't know. Everything is kind of crumbling apart right now, so I might be taking a few days off here and there.
And Jess, where can people find you?
Yeah, speaking of pesky underscores, you can find me at twitch.tv/whoa_Jess, and I'm inconsistent. You can find me on Twitter and YouTube and Discord, and I forgot I have an Instagram that I don't use,
okay,
but just
most people should forget that they have an Instagram.
Yeah, just Mondays through Thursdays, 10 a.m. Mountain Time, which is UTC-7.
And
on Twitch.
I'm Blind, and you can find me at twitch.tv/BLINDIRL and stupidskull.com. And I have Twitter, I think. You can tweet at me, allegedly. BLINDIRL. And if you want to get more episodes of this podcast, halcyonfrequency.com. Please leave us reviews on iTunes. It's hard, please. I know, but please do it. Also, Podcast Addict, you can leave reviews. Other podcast things, you can leave reviews. Just leave us 5 stars because we have a 5-star runtime for a 5-star podcast. Yeah, that's all I got to say. If you want to listen to more episodes of this podcast, you can, or you can not. Check us all out at halcyonfrequency.com. And I think that's pretty much everything. So there will be another episode on Sunday next week. Give it a listen when it pops up. Till then, I think we should synchronize a goodbye to everybody out there. Maybe one day we'll have like an outro
Goodbye.
music or something.
Sorry, I started early.
Just say goodbye. Goodbye. Bye.
Right. Goodbye.
Bye.
I was out of tune.
That's fine.